Show. Go live. Pop out chat. Hi, chat. Hello, everyone. Let's see. How are we doing today? Bum, 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 bum. And today's one is, of course, Coastal Defense Ships. Patron 29, Vey-ne-mőy-nen's Coastal Defense Ships. Theory, design, operational differences between navies. Now, this was an interesting one to approach because, honestly, you could have gone for it from many different angles. And I had to think which was the best angle for my channel, and which was the best angle for all of you. And I decided the best angle was to have lots of pictures of ships and discuss them as I go through. So, I hope you enjoy it, and if you feel, especially if Wayne feels that I don't cover enough detail of various things, then I will have another go, because there are many attempts ways to cover this. Carmen Gasberg, hello. John Shea, hello. Awazaski, hello. Bijan, I see you've already tested out the new emoji, yes? It seems to me that pretty much every 5 members I get from the lovely people that are you, every 5 of you who decide to join the channel, I get a new emoji. And the new emoji comes from this, which is called the FSA, Firepower, Speed and Armor of Warship Design. So, before I get into that, I'll say hello to everyone. Hello, Abazaski. Hello, Wayne-mőy-nen. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the tweet earlier. Rick Vasava, hello. Stafford Thompson, hello. How are you doing, Stafford? Apologies, I'm missing the majority of today as I had an early lunch. Enjoy, you deserve the early lunch. Seriously, Stafford, you're possibly one of the hardest working people I know. In fact, you're quite probably one of the hardest working people I know. Hello, old Richard. I hope you realise there are lots of videos coming up inspired by you and your desire to know about Churchill, and there's going to be a special competition running with those videos. Hello, Vision. Sorry you're going to miss another one. Hi, Petminter. Hi, Matthias Slavic. Hello, Grace Sarski. Hello, Wayne-mőy-nen. Again, Andrew Bend. Hello. Haven't seen you in a while. Hello, DG40. Hello, Carmen Gasberg. Hello, Wesley Phillips. Will the early US pre-dreadnoughts be included, as they were more coastal defense ships than oceanic battleships, from what I've read? They're a tough one. I am including a ship from the US, but it's not one of their battleships. But mainly the reason I'm only including one ship from the US is because there are quite so many other navies which don't get a mention who do, in normal discussions, who do have coastal defense ships. So I thought it would be more interesting to look at the other navies rather than the Americans who build them by accident rather than design, or rather by design of Congress, accident of Navy. Hello, John South. Hello, Jermac. Hello, Aegis Flow. Hello, Seneca Nero. Hello, Teamy Locker. Hello, Derp Squad. Guilty of Bias 881. Hello! Welcome to a second live stream. Hello for being here. Keelan19, hello. Lionheart X-Ray, hello. The Ring of Iron series is great. I'm listening to it while working out. I'm actually going to be working on a similar series to that at some point. I have an idea for coastal fortifications down in Cornwall, because it's a pretty cool place, but it requires me to get down to Cornwall to do the recording. Hello, Carmen Gaswick. It is alive, yes. Hello, Captain Seaford. Hello, Andreas Galera Garcia. Hello! Dirt Squad. Would speed and armor be a Roman era trireme? It's interesting. Potentially, yes. Shumi, hello. And Team Wish. Does the competition include photos of who looks more like a 15-year-old bulldog? No, because you'll just send me a load of photos of 15-year-old bulldogs. Hello, Eric Arcan. And Sonic, did the coastal defense ships evolve into Coast Guard rescue ships? Not normally. So, here is the multi-barreled hexagon, as I'm calling it, of design. Warship design. So, battleships Well, they tend to come somewhere in the middle. And if you think about it, so do aircraft carriers, if you don't mind swapping the firepower quotient from guns to aircraft. They tend to try and be a balance of armor, speed, and firepower. They tend to want to be fast, but they also want to have firepower and they want to have the armor. So they try and go for the middle. If we're looking for firepower and speed, in working as far away from armor as you can get goes battle cruisers, destroyers, and then torpedo boats, which, let's be honest, have no armor. Anyone who sits there and goes, but they have some metal plates to protect the cockpit, that's not armor, that's emotional support steel. Then we have for armor speed. Someone has already suggested triremes. I've put rams. I'm trying to think of what was a combination of armor and speed, but I really can't think of one at the moment. Shells was coming up there at one point, but that really isn't the ship design, is it? And then coastal defense ships are the interesting thing, because they're pretty much the only vessels which sits in the armor firepower portion of the sphere of the world. And there is a reason for this. Hello, Dan Freeman. The reason coastal defense ships fit where they are is because for a nation which is looking for a cost-effective deterrent, especially in the pre-aircraft age, and certainly the pre-satellite days, a coastal defense ship was a good idea. For 3 reasons. 1, until you got there, you didn't know where it was. 2, it could be armoured to a level at which even battleships would be worried about taking on, certainly enemy cruisers. It could be armed to a level at which battleships and enemy cruisers would be worried about taking it on. And this gives you an advantage, because you're not paying for the expensive thing. Because as we discussed before when we talked about battle cruisers, the reason they cost so much money is because of the engineering which has to go into their engines, their gears, their turbines. Honestly, armor and guns are cheap. Engines are the expensive parts of ships. Yes, they have to be long lead items, and especially once you get onto the bigger, more powerful guns, the 15-inch, etc. ones, you are talking very expensive items. But still, the engines, as today with ships, it's the engines and not so much the engines, it's the electronics and the brains of the ship, which are the expensive part. Then comes the engines and that stuff, and then it comes the missile systems and the weapons. And it's still, to this day, that sort of scenario, that it's not the stuff you think would be expensive, the stuff which catches your eye when you're looking at a ship, which is the expensive stuff. So if you're a nation which wants to build a powerful ship, but doesn't really need to go anywhere with it, just needs it to act as a deterrent for other people trying to get into your ports, etc., and maybe interdict your trade close to your coast, well, does speed really matter? Hello, Furry Kitten. Hello, Jessica Glue. Hello. And Senecarian. I mean, triremes are rams. Again, agreed. Scott, I'm thinking triremes, they usually didn't really have any artillery which is capable of doing any serious damage to the hull of a peer opponents. Archers and ballistas don't. No. Let's see for armor speed. World War II Scharnhorst. They do have a level of firepower. That's the thing. They're not totally in the 11-inch guns maybe, but they're still guns, and they're still pretty powerful guns. So they're in the capital ship area. They're not sacrificing guns entirely for armor and speed. See, when the Finnish twins are my favorites. They are coming. Santa Clear, in a container ship, the most expensive part is the engine. I think it might be about half the price of the rest of the ship, or am I really wrong here? I would not be surprised. That would sound about right. Hello, Paul Beswick. Evening, Alex in chat. Dan Freeman, hello everyone. Just away from the chat to make food. Okay, make food. I can understand it. I today have had a chicken burger. It was lovely. I was thinking as a Lionheart X-ray to Captain Z4. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, well, the trouble is, as I said, the Shan horse, not really. Guilty of bias 881. What about the glowworm as a ram? No, definitely fits in the destroyer section of the armor speed, although she's being used as a ram. Dan Freeman, Abdiel class. Again, not much armor there, so again, it's fitting in the cruiser area of firepower and speed. I was very careful in how I put this. It literally reads out from the center. Battle cruisers, destroyers, torpedo boats. The interesting question was where to put frigates, and I just gave up on that one because I was sort of going, well, frigates as they built weren't particularly fast, but they did have anti-submarine firepower, but they also had no armor. So honestly, the frigate almost goes off in another... I was considering adding another layer of hexagons around at that point and going... And the frigate goes even closer towards the firepower section. World War II frigate. Modern frigate goes sort of straight out. And you know, and then I decided, hang on, there's only so many hours in a day, and once you add in another layer of hexagons, who's going to stay? You're going to stop with a second layer of hexagons. At a certain point, it would then begin to look like some form of phalanx shield wall. Paul Bestwick, Icelandic fishery protection vessels. Yeah, they could be armor and speed. But they're not really warships, they're just used as warships. Don't overcomplicate diagrams. I didn't. I left it as it was. I have been to enough presentations by members of the armed forces that I do not want to overload a diagram. John South, armor, speed, I guess armored carriers? Well, they also carried quite a hefty firepower as well. Let's be honest, 4.5-inch guns and a fairly good air group, and some of the most concentrated air defences in the world at the time. So they're for a capital ship, they've got a fairly balanced firepower. Very good. Icebreakers, and yeah, that's basically I think we decided armor and speed is the sort of icebreaker area. More civilian law enforcement, perhaps. I should have put civilian law enforcement in the armor and speed area. Interesting. My brother also sees chicken sandwich as a chicken burger and thinks chicken sandwich is done. Was even debate explaining it to his classmates. I had a lovely chicken burger. It was a lovely one. The fact it comes from a fish and chip restaurant we'll leave to one side, but they do a very, very nice chicken burger. Lionheart X-ray, LCS, where would they fall under? Honestly, there's the all-encompassing thing for them was getting 40 knots, so the LCS would be in, well, not this side's hexagon, but if I put my hand, they would basically be in a hexagon about here. So they'd be on the second line out of hexagons over here. That's good. Possibly the Royal Navy's Emu War movement against the Icelandic fishery protection vessels. Well, that was the trouble. They couldn't really do anything against them other than try and bash them back. And it was at that point the Royal Navy realised that none of his ships since World War II had been built with armour. Here's the thing: this is what you really needed for the Cod Wars was HMS Vanguard, because if Vanguard had turned up, The Icelandic vessels could have bashed against her all day. It wouldn't have had any effect at all, and she could have bashed them back. But they got rid of Vanguard, so they didn't have that option. That's it. Are we playing blockbusters? Not at the moment. Not yet. But no. There is a point, as I said, I've been trying to make. The point for the coastal defense ships is if you don't need to worry about speed, you need to be able to move in the water at a reasonable pace, but you're not worried about ecstatic amounts of speed, then frankly, you can afford to put that money into firepower and armor. And also think about it again from a maintenance perspective. What is easier to maintain? A cheaper, more simple engine, which gives you good cruising speed, but doesn't give you that high speed? Or a high-speed, high-intensity engine? So, also, the other thing is coastal defense ships have cheaper running costs than building the equivalent firepower and armor into a faster ship. A lot cheaper. Right then. So, here is my first entry into a coastal defense vessel. And I know this is going to start some people screaming at me, but it's very simple. At no point can you claim the US Monitor is designed for fighting on the high seas. She's also not exactly fast. Let's be honest, her top speed is 6 knots. This is not a fast vessel. It's also technically lost at sea. She's been discovered and partially salvaged, but she was lost at sea in high speed, in sort of stormy conditions. But what's she sacrificing speed for? Well, she's sacrificing it to carry a lot of armor. And let's be honest, when she's launched in 1862 and commissioned in 1862, she is carrying 8-inch of armor on, that's 203 millimeters on the gun turret, a belt of between 3 and 5 inches, a deck of 1 inch, and the pilot house has a whopping 9 inches of armor. Yowza! For 1862, that's thick. That's going to take a lot of oomph. And yes, firepower-wise, she does have 2 11-inch guns. But again, this is 1862. 2 11-inch is not bad. And I know I don't include the Scharnhorst in it, but because of their 11-inch guns. But I'd say, again, that's because they're a lot more faster and they do actually have firepower. This is firepower, this is armor, and it's not speed. And it is for defending the coast, or blockading the coast. So, meet the first of the coastal defense ships as we are looking at them today, the USS Monitor. She's not actually what I would call the first coastal defense ship ever at this point, but she's certainly the first one which is built on the diagram which we've been talking about before, on the armor firepower concentration. Because that is what she is. She is armor and firepower. And honestly, not much in terms of seakeeping or speed. But we'll leave that to one side. Let's get the questions up and see what's coming through. I will get into the modern equivalent of the coastal defense ship towards the end. John Shay, firepower and armor. I wonder what would be the biggest gun you could put on a coastal defense ship. Quite big. That's what I claim that USS One was designed to fight at sea. She was just really badly designed for the task. No. Lionheart X-ray. Coastal defense ship is pretty much a goalie in hockey. Just get a big person to sit in front of the to block anything coming in. In ice hockey, I would agree to an extent, but really, really big. And we're talking really, the sort of person who's not fast at moving around in terms of distance on ice, but is basically built like a brick wall and no one wants to get within stick range of, because if they bring down, it's going to hurt. Lionheart X-ray. I wonder how loud it was inside when the monster would get hit. I don't think many of the crew involved in the fight with the Virginia actually had the ability to hear for a couple of days afterwards. There have been various reports on that one. The obvious counter to US One would seem to be mortar-type weapons. If you want to try aiming those at that thing, when it's very, very low in the water. Wesley Phillips, could you make the claim the CSS Virginia was the first? Trouble is, Virginia is built on a seagoing, what was supposed to be the USS Virginia, an ironclad frigate. So, no. And honestly, she's even stranger. This one I can make the claim of a coastal defense ship. In too much. These days, the monitor could have taken the intercoastal waterway and avoided high seas. Yep. Nicholas Wu, what is the smallest hull that you could fit a Great Gustav or Dora caliber gun to? Let me just check. Let's see, how long is that? Ooh. Well, you're probably looking at least at a monitor-type vessel. Well, that's got that. That gun is length 16.5 meters. And that one's length is 3 times that. So recoil weight. Ooh. You're probably looking at somewhere in the region of a 12,000 ton, 200 meter long vessel. I'm just thinking because the Schwer Gustav, the Great Gustav gun, is well, that's 40, near 47, nearly 40, over 47 meters long. Near enough makes them a difference 48. And I'm basing it on the problems that they worked out very specifically that they needed something the Martian size for the to balance the 16.5 meter long 15-inch gun. And once you get into that, that's 7,000 tons fully loaded. And once you look at the various pressures, you can work things down a bit. But yeah, I'd say 12 to 14,000 tons for Schwer Gustav. Instead of sailing the monster detail, she'd be loaded onto a ship carrying ship and taken to the war zone that way. More than likely. Wayne Boren, Drac had a pic of a 15-inch on an Italian monitor. There have been lots of... I think I've done a whole video on the Marshall Nays. If I haven't done a video yet, I'm planning on doing a video on them. I think I have done a video on the Marshall Nays. Hello, Roland Cash. And, yeah, they're 15-inch monitors. Kaka's re-US's monitor 11-inch. For her displacement, was there any ship with comparable firepower? Well, that's the interesting thing once you look into the monitor, the USS monitor. She is a pretty darn heavily armed vessel for her size. She is about 1,000 tons. 1,003 tons to be precise. And yet she has this firepower. She has all this armor. And honestly, looking at the amount of armor she's got on her, a goodly amount of her weight is armor. I would say possibly as much as 45% probably of her weight is made up of armor. Honestly, looking at it and looking at the amount of and the weight of armor and density at that time, if they're right on the weights of these things, which is always a question. It's always a question, but it's, you know, not one we'll ask too much. Right. That's God. Clock. If you loaded the Schwer Gustav gun onto a railway ferry, that's the Great Gustav gun, for anyone else ordering earlier, onto a railway ferry, and possibly braced the deck below the railbed, you would need to brace it heavily, would it be able to fire? It would depend on the size and the strength of the rail ferry, and honestly, it might be able to fire, but whether or not that rail ferry would be above water after it had fired would be a different thing. I was calculating, even if it's on a firing on a fixed bearing, it just no. And actually, honestly, I have to admit, when I was talking about the size of ship needed, I don't think you would be able to have a turret-like system. I think it would be like the vessels which are armed with the 18-inch guns in the latter part of World War One. I think it would be a fixed mount. It would not be a swivel turret. It might be a turret, but it would be a fixed turret, and you would move the ship to aim it. You have done the martial work anyways. Thank you, Jade. Happy with it. Wayne Boren, the Italian monitor had no speed or armor, just a ton of firepower. Yeah, we'll get into that at some point. Sonic Near, US monitor versus HMS Warrior. As I've said before, when I actually answered this question, was specifically had an entire video about the various things from the American Civil War, and I think did cover the monitor versus warrior scenario, and basically said, well, if the monitor, if the warrior's close enough, if the warrior's far enough at sea, it's for its normal operational range, the monitor will probably sink before it reaches it. If it does, the easiest thing for the warrior to do probably is to ram the monitor, because the monitor isn't that maneuverable. And yes, it can turn its gun, but it can barely move its way out of its way itself. And the speed of the warrior is such it could easily catch up and smash through the monitor. But the main option for the warrior would be just to ignore it and keep far enough out to sea. Or, as Greg Sarsi said, warrior can just sail past the top speed and swamp the monitor. That quite possibly could happen as well. Evening, car. Discord, just think about firing it. Would the ship sink, or if it was on a railway gun setup, would recoil send it flying off the back of the rail ferry? Potentially both simultaneously. I guess that's Seneca. But no, the USS Monitor is our first one. And honestly, what's the operational theory behind her? Well, it's trying to produce the strongest possible ship possible to fight in the confined waters of the littorals. That is what the Monitor's for. She's not to go racing around the world. If we go back to her, she is to fight in the confined waters. Now, ARI Independencia. Now, that's, of course, the Argentinian Navy. And these are rather cool ships, and I will just give you their stats. Usually called the Libertad class, sometimes called the Libertad class battleship, but let's be honest, they are coastal ships. They weigh in at 2,336 tons. They have a length of 240 feet or 73.15 meters, a beam of 44.5 feet or 13.5 meters, a draft of 13 feet or basically 4 meters. They have 2 shafts powered by 2 vertical compound steam engines for 3,000 indicated horsepower, supplied to them by 4 boilers, and they carry 340 tons coal. Their speed is 11 knots, and they can do their range is 3,000 nautical miles at 10 knots. They have a complement of 160. Here's where things start getting interesting, because they have 2 240mm or 9.4-inch Krupp guns, 4 120mm or 4.7-inch Ellswick guns, 4 47mm, that's 1.9-inch Nordenfeldt quick-firing guns, and 4 25mm 0.98-inch Nordenfeldt guns, and then 4 18-inch or 457mm Whitehead torpedo tubes. So that's not a ship you want to have a fun run-in with, but let's hear about their armour. Deck, 50mm or 2 inches. Belt, 200mm or 7.9 inches. Main gun shields, 125mm, that's 4.9 inches. Barbettes, 200mm, 7.9 inches. And conning tower, 100mm, 3.9 inches. Now, these are built by Camel Laird at Birkenhead. So they are built really well. And they are ordered under the construction of 2 twin-shaft ram-equipped battleships for riverine service. Unit cost was £176,000 each. Now, what are these ships being bought to do? Well, this is being bought and they are laid down in 1890. They're completed and commissioned by 1893. They serve with the Argentinian Navy till 1946. Then they serve with the Coast Guard till 1968. They are powerful little ships. There are 2 of them. Their role, though, I wouldn't say is anti-battleship. After all, they're carrying a 9.4-inch gun as their primary armament. Interesting enough, German guns on a British-built ship. Who says we can't be friends? What they are, though, is what are the Argentinians likely to be facing off against at this point? Well, they're likely to be facing off against cruisers from major powers or similarly equipped ships from other powers locally. This ship, therefore, is a very powerful tool. It's a very capable tool. And it's a pretty ship. Now let's see. Hello, Jay Risner. Nicholas Wood, what about boarding with ship's boats? There isn't many ways into the monitor. Seneca, these look like pre-dreadnoughts. Well, they're sort of in that period. The air raid Independence does not look like they would be any particularly good for defending Malvinas. It is a pretty shit, though. As Seneca says, it is a pretty shit. Odin Class, was there a balancing act, no pun intended, between a shallow draft for coastal work and gun size ability? Yes, I'm fairly sure the fact that they were supposed to be a riverine battleship is what limited them to 9.4 inch. Because you could quite easily have built them as a slightly scaled up design with a 12-inch guns. These are nice little ships. But, as I said, they are for deterring enemy cruisers. But, those torpedoes. 4 18-inch torpedoes. That's good. Were the people smuggling into Argentina incredibly well armed? Is that why the Coast Guard needed a 9.4-inch armed warship? I think probably, and this is going to sound terrible, but no one wanted to get rid of independence and liberty as these 2 ships. So it was decided to give them to the Coast Guard for 20 years because that is finally sold off by the Navy in 1948. And the Coast Guard basically keeps them for 20 years. And then finally in 1968 decide, hang on, these ships just can't be run any longer. Which is sad, but it happens. Right then, Monarch Class. And these are fairly cute ships, but again, they are built around about the same time. And you will notice a theme starting to appear at a certain point. The Monarch Class. These are built in 1895. And I should have mentioned that the Libertad class did come after the El Piata class, which had existed before in 1874, but they were just weird looking. So, the Monarch class are coastal defense ships built by Austria-Hungary. And they are built between, well, Monarch is commissioned in 1898. Vey-ne is commissioned in 1897. and Budapest is commissioned in 1898. They weigh in at roughly 5,785 tons, or as near enough makes no difference, 5,800 tons. They are roughly 99.22 meters long, or 325.5 feet. They have a beam of 17 meters, or 55 feet 9 inches, and a draft of 6.6 meters, or 22 feet. Their propulsion comes from 12 coal-fired Belleville boilers, which had an output of roughly 9,180 horsepower in Budapest. They had cylindrical boilers in Wien. They all supplied inverted vertical triple expansion engines, which put out 8,500 horsepower and had a top speed of 15.5 knots for Monarch and Wen, 17.5 knots for Budapest. But they were roughly capable of 2,200 miles at roughly 12 knots. Their complement is 469, so they're about 3 times the complement of the previous class we were discussing. They carried 4 9.4-inch guns, 6 5.9-inch guns, the 4 9.4-inch in two twin turrets, the 6 5.9-inch in 6 single positions, 1 2.8-inch anti-aircraft gun, 2 2.6-inch landing guns, 10 47mm guns, and I think it's in single mounts, and 4 in a single quadruple mount, and they had 2 torpedo tubes. Their belt was 11 inches, their turrets had 8 inches of armour, and their conning tower 8.7 inch, and the deck 2.4 inches. These were fairly well armoured, fairly hefty ships. Yes, they were coastal defence ships. No, they weren't fast, but by golly did they pack a punch. And again, if you're the Italians, you do not want to mess around with them unless you're bringing all your forces. And honestly, I would see that the Argentinians, if it hadn't been for the riverine requirement, could well have built something of this caliber, or had something built of this caliber, because camel lads could have churned it out quite happily. Hi, Dr. Trophonius. Regosala, would gunboats be early coastal defence ships? Certainly, there are various options that of gunboats and various other ships which could be said to be coastal defence ships. There are various guard ships, which the British often have in service and other fleets tend to have in service, which can be argued to be coastal defence ships. But the thing is, talking about as a purpose-built coastal defence ship is something different. Although there are various American presidencies which do flirt with the idea of gunboats and coastal defence ships, which can, especially ships which they like the idea of ships which can be taken everywhere by horses. And you sort of go, I don't think you understand the point of a ship. Danfrim, is the Hilux the answer to the problem of how to stand a chance of successfully invading Russia? No. Oh, there's now debated whether Hilux is mobile coastal batteries. You can fit a lot into the back of a Hilux, I know. I've used one occasionally. Galgasm, off Wien and Budapest. Off. Wien and Budapest. Just the pronunciation. Oh, thank you. That's good. We have good intelligence. Chile just ordered a 12-inch iron ship. Cough, because we're building it for them. Wouldn't you like us to build you one to compete with it? I'm not saying that the British fueled the Dreadnought race in South America. We certainly profited from it. I like the Monarch class. They are good-looking ships. They are very nice-looking ships. And they're well-built ships. And again, this is the kind of ship you need if you're talking about fighting in the Adriatic. Because again, you think about it. The Austrians were expecting to come up against Italian battleships, to come against Italian ships. Well, if they're going to do that and have to fight their way out, they don't need something which has long range. Because there is no range, space for speed and maneuver. Let's be honest, you're in the Adriatic. Where can you maneuver to? And your only options for high speed are to high speed it out of there, in which case you're going to be high speeding into a minefield, which you're probably going to have to clear. So your options become firepower and armor. It comes down very quickly to what are you building your ships for? What do you want them to do? So, that takes us back to South America and the Deodoro class. Now, the Deodoro class, they are cool for their time. They really are cool for their time. And when I say they're cool for their time, this is built in 1898. And is probably the last of Brazil's coastal defense ships, although they still do have a riverine ship wandering around, which is a very heavily armed vessel. Interesting enough, the Scientific American, that well-known judge of naval shipping, called them small vessels of a type built only for second-rate naval powers. But also noted, it was a wonder that so much armour and armament could be carried on a ship of its size. Now, how do I explain this? This is the reason why this class is the reason why people shouldn't have been surprised when the Brazilians ordered dreadnoughts. They are 3,162 tons in standard. They have a length of 81.5 meters, a beam of 14.4 meters, and a draft of 4.1 meters. They have 8 Langrafel and Dallas boilers, which power 2 shaft triple expansion engines. They are built in France, and with 3,400 indicated horsepower, they achieve a top speed of 15 knots and a complement of 200. They're armed with 2 Armstrong 9.2-inch 45 caliber guns in single turrets, 4 4.7-inch guns in 50 caliber turrets, 6 6-pounder, that's 57mm Torettos Hotchkiss guns, and 2 17.7-inch or 450mm torpedo tubes. Then we get to the belt and the armour. So, belt 350 to 150mm. Yes, for anyone asking, that is 35 to 15 centimeters. Thick. Deck 45mm thick. Casemate 75mm thick, 3 inches. The turret face 220mm or 8.7 inches thick. And in 1912, the vessels are modified to have 8 Babcock and Wilcox oil-firing boilers replacing their coal-fire boilers. And they could now, by that point then, carry 400 tons of oil instead of 400 tons of coal. Deodoro, actually, when she was decommissioned in 1924, is sold to the Mexican Navy and serves there for another 14 years. They are powerful ships, and if anyone wants to find the link to the Scientific American article, you can track it down. I did manage to track it down. I have to admit the Wikipedia link didn't really tell me where it was. Well, that was the first place I saw the quote, and then I ended up going to JSTOR and hunting it down through there. So if you have a JSTOR account, you can hunt down the Scientific American article. Hello, Andrea Resende. All right. Okay, let's see. Hi, let's see. Andrew, always good day to either your Drac live streams, fall into work and lunch breaks. Thanks. It's pronounced Reisner. I did get it right, I think, first time, and then I got it wrong this time. Seneca, it is crazy to me Austria-Hungary had a good navy. They had a really good navy. It's kind of like the Italian navy. I spent half my life going, yes, they did have a good navy. Ian Carr, Argentine ships were probably paid for with beef sold to the UK. Beef and oil exports. As I see, I suspect it's much easier to move a ship with large caliber than move a gun of small, same caliber over land. Pretty much. You must remember, a ship is basically self-propelled, self-contained artillery. Seneca, Deodoro is ugly. It's not ugly, she's dressed ship. This is what they look like when they're entertaining. Fair winds. I'm not sure why you've retracted your message, message, but hello. Seneca, is there a picture when it's not laundry day on the ship? This isn't laundry day. This is what they did when it was a hot day and they were entertaining. Literally, they put up those things to try and keep out the sun. Scientific American, the magazine that took 6 years to make the Wright brothers made a legitimate flight. Scientific American is what I use for occasionally winding people up. If I ever need a good quote to wind people up, I usually go and hunt down the Scientific American quote. Ron Cash, Deodoro had a nice long stern deck. Are they planning on some entertaining? They were basically long decks either end. They could do a lot of entertaining. Andrea Rezende. The Wright brothers did not make a legitimate flight. It was Santos Dumont the first to do it. There is a whole collection, Andrea. We'll just go with the Wright brothers because it's just easier in terms of source material for teaching students in the English language world. But honestly, there are some British, there are some French, there are Brazilian, there's Chilean, and I think there's an Indian gentleman who all claim they might have been the first to do it. Honestly, the thing that really annoys me about the Wright brothers is what they do to Charlie Taylor, but we'll leave that on one side. Graham Hunter. Habsburgs were around a long time, still are. They are around a long time. Yes, I should say, Andrea is a very proud Brazilian. I am still quite amazed to this day that I do not know how it is, and I put it all down to Andrea actually, that Brazil is the country which is number 5 on my list of countries which watch this channel. It goes America, Britain, Canada, Australia, Brazil at the moment in top 5 countries. It gives me the top 5 on the analytics. Seneca, how was such a rubbish magazine a scientific American business for such a long time? The interesting thing is you're thinking that Scientific American has gone out of business. I'm trying to remember who it is now. No, it's still going. It is still going. The Scientific American is still going. I didn't think it had gone out of business. I was just checking that they hadn't changed the name or something. But no, yeah, it's still going. This is actually a really cool class, and I really like it. Basically, the Brazilians build these two ships, and everyone goes, they're really heavily armed and armoured, aren't they? And they go, yeah, but that's just, we'll ignore that for a few years. And then the Brazilians order 2 dreadnoughts, and everyone's going, yeah, the dreadnoughts, they don't fit with the Brazilian mentality at all. And you go, have you seen their coastal defence ships? These basically is a nation which we like big guns, we like armour, and we like speed. We'd love a dreadnought. Basically, for Brazil, the dreadnought is the nation I am most surprised this day that still doesn't have a dreadnought in service when they have all sorts of other ships they kept in service. Is Brazil doesn't have a dreadnought in service. If there was a national culture and mentality which should have preserved the dreadnought in service, the dreadnought battleship in service, it is Brazil. Basically, I am surprised there is still that the Navy didn't basically go, we will cut anything, but not our dreadnoughts. Graham Hanley, you mean you use the Scientific American and not the Admiralty for good quotes? I use the Scientific American for quotes that will wind up engineering students. I use the Admiralty for quotes which will wind up other historians. And I use the Air Ministry for quotes which will wind up YouTube viewers. Jay Reisner. Yeah, perfectly, thank you. And you've been getting it right the last 3-4 times till this morning. But I appreciate the correction. Thank you. I do apologise for getting it wrong. Now, yes, it is described as Brazilian cruiser. Someone decided that they must be a cruiser because they're not a battleship. Well, I would agree, but it's not really... it's changed to the Hull Trough class. Yeah, the Brazilian ship is not a cruiser. Come on, Dr. Z. They bought the sales line, Fear God and Dreadnought. Yeah. That's good. I need to show you a lecture, not my professional troll. The line between lecture and professional troll is a very fine line. Because for one group, the purpose is just to wind up for the sake of winding up. For a lecturer, often the reason you're winding up students, etc., is to make them go and do research. You put a quote up there which is going to annoy them and nag at them, they will go and do research on it, because I've often found this. The best way to sometimes inspire students is to challenge them. And I go, right then, here is a quote from a Scientific American about this. Prove it wrong. And they're all going, no, you're definitely wrong. Well, prove it. Write an essay, prove it wrong. And they go off and have fun. And they come back and I get good essays. And I get engineering students who are engaging and doing the research they're supposed to. It's like when I ask them to write a profile, I say, pick any 2 engineers or any 2 of your people from your field from history who inspire you. Or current day. My own requirement is that because of so many years of getting it, they are not allowed to do Tesla and Elon Musk as a pairing. Because one year I got, I swear, 50% of all the essays were Tesla and Elon Musk. And I just got fed up with reading about that pairing. Which is, I know, terrible, but hey, I'm my own exam board. I'm the one setting the thing. I can make the rules. So, I'm sorry. If Elon Musk is watching this, yes, I banned you from my students writing essays about you. Because they just write too much about you. And they compare you to Tesla because that's who you named your cars after. And I just got fed up with the combination. Jay Reisner, is there a current a reason for lack of any real current naval powers in modern South America? Have you seen the Brazilian Navy? The interesting thing about Brazil is that I could honestly see them doing a lot better than they are doing now if they had proper long-term investment. And I could see them operating a carrier up to the level of Queen Elizabeth class, or at least perhaps Italian Trieste class. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they did look at that sort of level of ship. Nikola Tesla or the company? Nikola Tesla. They're pretty cool, but again, one of them got into really obsessed with various birds and Tesla. No. Right then, so, the Herolf Troll class. Now, they were completed in 1901, 1905, and 1908. They were stricken in 32, 36, and scuttled during Operation Safari in 1943. They were built for the Royal Danish Navy. And they are 3,500 tons in an 82.87 meter, so pretty much 83 meter long package, with a beam of 15 meters and a draft of, near enough to make no difference, 5 meters. Top speed of 15.5 knots, 4,200 horsepower over 2 shafts, complement 254. There's going to be something very spooky here going on. They're armed with 2 9.4-inch guns, 4 5.9-inch guns, 10 57mm guns, 3 18-inch torpedo tubes. They had an 8-inch belt and 7 inches around each of the turrets. Now, honestly, here is the thing. The Royal Danish Navy in 1900 are faced with an honest problem. What do they build? They are slap bang in between the Germans of the Kaiserlich Marine and the Royal Navy, especially until the Kiel Canal is constructed. And even when the Kiel Canal is constructed, let's be honest, the Denmark Straits are going to be a pretty critical point. What do they build? What do they operate? And they're left with, we need something which has firepower. But again, you're noticing they're going into the 9.2, 9.4 inch range. And that's a very popular range for a coastal defense ship. Because if you're going much bigger than that, you need to build a bigger ship to deal with the recoil and the power and take enough shells, etc., and make it usable. But this is a range of a very useful gun. It's got good penetrating power, good impact power, and there aren't many cruisers which are going to want to fight this. So if I'm going to take it on, I'm going to have to bring a battleship. And basically, that's what coastal defense ships are for the Danish Navy. They're about having enough status, enough firepower, that you have to bring a battleship if you want to make it back down. Which makes them small enough not to be considered a threat by either Britain or America or Germany, because let's be honest, the Danish do have experience of what happens when they have a navy which the Royal Navy considers a threat. We did Copenhagen twice, based on the fear of them joining the French. Did they know what? They didn't want Copenhagen to happen a third time. But they want something which has enough status, which means they can't be pushed around. Coastal offensive ships are a perfect fit for that. And that's what the hell of Troll Class are. And that's why they spend so long in service. And honestly, they're good-looking ships for their size and period. Dev Squad. Musk isn't an engineer, he's a salesman. Yeah, I would agree with that one. Honestly, some of his things could be solved by building a decent railway. It's a hypertube. Favorite episode was: a man who steals a melon is a thief. A man who steals a kingdom is a king. That's a good one. So there are dozens of weird stories about him. Andrea Rasande. I agree with you, Dr. Alex. They could have been doing a lot better for some time now. There are a series of new steps investments, but this will take time to show. We cross fingers for Brazil. Their navy's good. I look forward to seeing if they come back to FOST, because they used to come to FOST quite regularly. That's the Flag Officer Sea Training in the UK. And then they stopped coming for a few years. And it would be good to see them come back, because they used to really enjoy it and usually bring it, especially during the Thursday Wars when they're invited to take part. Ryan Cash, is that a Jade, a happy wife, and 3,500 tons of pure ugly? Do you want to fight it? Let's be honest. Do you want to fight this? Unless you're bringing a battleship. Dr. Rose, where have we heard this before? Yes, there is a sort of a happy medium of these ships. Sonic Canary, if the Danish Navy build a navy too big, they end up getting stolen again. Pretty much. Man. Andreas Hennen, today Reisner. A lot of economic and political crises affect us severely too. This brings us several steps back. So, wait, how often did the Danish end up getting their navy stolen? Twice by the Royal Navy. They didn't want it a third time. And unfortunately, it happens a third time. The Germans steal one of these ships, and in World War II, it gets sunk by the Germans as part of their plan. The Peter Skram, Peter Skram is sunk during Operation Safari, which was basically it's aimed to disarm the Danish military. It carried out in 1943, and they managed to kill between 23 to 26 Danish troops. They injure around 40 to 50, and they capture 4,600. And basically, their plan is to scuttle the Royal Danish Navy and turn all the Danish soldiers. It was not nice. Not nice at all. Just sank all their ships, just cruelly. John South, I used to have great times with the Brazilians at FOST, and they were good in Thursday Wars. Dev's good. Hypertube is a vacuum railway and very invented to be worse and more expensive. An awful idea in the 1800s is still an awful idea. Rise now. Off topic. What do you think about the Iranian warships passing through the channel? Well, if they're still afloat by the time they've got finished the end of the channel, I would like to send them a chocolate bar as a reward. Currently, I'm not sure whether we should be following them with a warship or a lifeboat. I think probably both. That's good. Musk might be my version of what Crete is for you. I haven't visited Crete recently, but, you know, I think I might like Crete itself. It's just what happens in World War II. Senator, was there a nation that's got its navy stolen more often than Denmark? In its entirety, no. And individual occasions of stealing, probably the French. By the British. Grandma, didn't Fisher and mumble a bit about doing the Copenhagen again? He had all sorts of plans for doing things again. Michael S. Schnellberg. I always thought that we sink our ships ourselves so the Germans couldn't take them. There's a dispute over whether the Danish sailors managed to sink their ships or the Germans sunk the ships. When it comes to some of them, I think it's certainly the Danish. When it comes to that particular ship, the Peter Skram, I think it possibly was the Germans, because that one was under very heavy German watch and guard, and the Germans were on it almost immediately, from what I understand. But the trouble is, I have to admit, there aren't very good English language sources about Operation Safari, and so I am limited. I have to admit, Denmark is one of those places which, once I am travelling around and have found my passport, because currently I put it somewhere safe. When I think I told everyone, I put it somewhere safe when the lockdown began and I wasn't going to be going anywhere. So I put it somewhere safe so I wouldn't lose it. Now I can't find it. Anyway, we're now on to the Finnish Navy. We're on to Vey-ne-mőy-nen. Now, the Finnish coastal ships have built two vessels. The Ilmarinen and the Vey-ne-mőy-nen, and they are technically Panzerlevia, or armoured ships. They're built in Finland by Finns, and these are some interesting ships. Now, Vey-ne-mőy-nen itself displaces 3,900 tons. It's 93 meters long. It's 16.864 meters wide, so near enough makes no difference, 16.9 meters or wide. Draft, 5 meters. Where's this come from again? They have a diesel-electric powertrain using 4 Krupp engines, supplying 1,173 horsepower each to 2 shafts, for a total of 4,700 horsepower, a top speed of 14.5 knots, and a range of 700 nautical miles at 14.5 knots. They are armed with four 254mm or 10-inch Bofors guns. Basically, they are armed with 4 10-inch guns, and this is in 1939, they're armed with that. They're armed with 8 105mm Bofors guns, so 8 4-inch guns in 4 double mounts, 4 40mm Vickers guns, so why they don't have 40mm Bofors, I do not know at this point, and 2 20mm Madsens. And by 1944, they were armed with 4 40mm Bofors. Woohoo, that makes sense. That's good. Finally got them Bofors rather than the Vickers, 40mm, and 8 20mm Madsens. Now, the Ilmarinen is sunk in 1941. She's been commissioned only in 1934, so she's been around for 7 years when she sunk. The Vey-ne-mőy-nen is transferred to the Soviet Union in 1947 and is not scrapped till 1966. And I would say they are good-looking ships. I would say they are very cool-looking ships. And I would argue that for the Finnish Navy, they are pretty much exactly what they need. But please note, 10-inch guns, they've gone for slightly bigger, but these are built in the 1930s, so things have gone up a bit. But let's be honest, That's basically my perfect design of how I would build these ships that we've been over before. You have the big guns fore and aft, and then you have the secondary armament in a diamond formation. So which we've talked about before in various other ships, and they've done this, which means that whichever angle you're coming at this ship, 6 of its 4-inch guns can be firing at you. So its broadside capability is 6 4-inch guns with 4 10-inch guns to add more fun to it. Adpab, is the tower on the Finnish ship to look over islands? I think so. Juno 191. It's time to learn German. I learned German till I was nearly 4. Till I was 13, and then my school decided that I couldn't. That if anyone who was dyslexic couldn't do foreign languages because we had enough trouble with English. So I was taken off French and German and Latin. So I couldn't do. I haven't done them from about 20 odd years. So probably actually what I really need to do is visit Germany and Austria and immerse myself in the linguistics for a bit. Because this is what happened. Next week I am supposed to be in Scotland. So if I record any videos the week or so after I'm in Scotland, I'll probably have a Scottish accent. Because that's what happens. When I go places, I pick up the accent. Vey-ne-mőy-nen. Thank you, Carl Gasberg. John South, you put it somewhere so safe even you can't get it. I put it somewhere so safe I can't even find it. So anyway, that looks like a horizontally challenged dreadnought battleship. I honestly think if you consider the 1930s, if the Finnish Navy had been building a dreadnought, I think they would have built a jolly good dreadnought. Honestly, I think the Russians were very glad the Finnish didn't build a dreadnought, because by gone they'd have built a big one. Ronan Cash, did anyone else think Vey-ne-mőy-nen's profile may think of the Atlanta class, or have I got a sunstroke? Hello, little Robin. There is a similarity there. I'd have said actually they look like shrunken British battleship. They do look like a shrunken British battleship to me. And the sort of overhang of the tower, it's kind of like the box of their doom sort of thing. Hello, Cowterface. Oh, Richard. Flambas wants Vey-ne-mőy-nen in World of Warships as a Tier 2 BB to fight the Mikasa. No. Death Squad. Until 1943, Denmark was pretty much left to its own devices. After 1943, it started demanding things like resources and the Danish Navy. Death Squad. Are we doing a tour of Scandinavia? Are the Tricona class next? There are more stuff coming. Adfab, where is the line between coastal defense ships versus Monitor? Well, as we did start off with USS Monitor as our first coastal defense ship, that is a rather interesting design. Because, of course, remember, one of the most recent monitors I did for the Royal Navy started out as Norwegian coastal defense ships. So, honestly, I would say the difference between Monitor and coastal defense ship is sometimes difficult to discern. I would say if it's got a balanced armament, it's a coastal defense ship. If it's literally just around a couple of big guns, it's a Monitor. Which is why the Gorgon class are particularly most interesting, because they are really coastal defense ships, but the Royal Navy uses monitors. And it's one of the interesting things is that I really do think the Norwegians should have put the money into infrastructure and got that ship back into their service, because they would have been so useful. When we're in, the Finns built some amazing guns. They did. And this ship, this is a good example of Finnish engineering. It really is good. Now, let's go to here. I think Carl von Gasberg will find it quite funny what I've named this part 3 of this video. Let's see. Am I detecting that Scandinavians were building ships big enough to basically not have them pinched in traditional style by the RN? Pretty much. Don't catch, just do the speak slowly in English with the appropriate foreign accent. I hear it makes British universally understood and popular. No, it doesn't. I'm not sure what accent I was doing then. Come on, guys. Read 10-inch Bofors on Vey-ne-mőy-nen. With their 45-degree elevation in turret, they had a 30-kilometer range. Bad day on the receiving end, if that they were. Thank you, level 98 bear hunting armor. They are cute. Vey-ne-mőy-nens are cute. Well, that's the strange thing. I do have quite a lot of various families who are Gaelic. So, when are we going to guess which navy this belongs to? Anyone want to guess which navy this belongs to? Very quickly coming in with French. Yes, it is French. This is the Bovines, 1892, and you guessed it. It is the French Navy. And it is, of course, how do I put this politely? In the middle of the Ushakov era. And the French are going, yes, this is what will scare off the British if we have torpedo boats and coastal defense battleships. And this coastal defense ship weighs in at 6,798 tons, or rather 6,800 tons, pretty much. It's 89.65 meters long, so near enough makes no difference, 90 meters. 17.86 meters wide, so again, pretty much 18 meters in beam. And it has a draft of 7.5 meters. 16 water tube boilers, thanks to two triple expansion engines, supply 8,865 indicated horsepower to 2 shafts for a top speed of 16 knots. And they had a range of 3,900 nautical miles at 8 knots. They could serve as a flagship with a crew of 371, or have 333 in normal. And here is what really tells you they're French. They're armed with 2 12-inch guns, that's 305 millimeters, 8, then that's in single turrets, 8 single 3.9-inch guns, that's 100 millimeter guns, in single mounts, 4 single 47mm guns, 1.9-inch guns, 10 single 37mm guns, and 2 17.7-inch torpedo tubes. I would even say they skip a bit on the belt, but, they don't really. The belt is 250 to 464mm thick, and that's 9.8 to 18.3 inches thick belt armor. Decks are 30.6 inches, or 92mm. The conning tower is 3.1 inches, or 80mm. And the turrets are 12.6 inches, or 320mm thick. That is some hefty armor. Hefty armor. And of course, as you all guessed from that hull type, they are most definitely French. Design, believe it or not, began in 1887. And it's basically Admiral Theophile Orb, or Theophile Orb, who's the Minister of Navy and Colonies at the time, and is obsessed with the Ushakov. And believes basically everything in war comes down to commerce raiding and coastal defenses. Now, believe it or not, they are half-sisters to another class called the Vey-ne-mőy-nen, which are laid down at the same time. But they exchanged the far more seaworthy forecastle deck to mount 13.4-inch guns rather than the 12-inch guns. How to say you have an inferiority complex over your next-door neighbor's battleships, but don't want to admit you have an inferiority complex over your next-door neighbor's battleships? Build a coastal defense ship which is using battleship-level guns. This is a pre-dreadnought without any of the prettiness of a pre-dreadnought. I think there was some point in which we were aware some of the French ships were built to just... The idea was, we'll make them so ugly the Royal Navy won't want to nick them. Nicholas Wu, Hannah. I always thought that the Japanese never really got rid of the Ushakov theory with their love of torpedoes. To be honest, the Ushakov never really triumph, and not even when missiles come in adfab. But there's always an idea going around the young school that we can do a different way. Trouble is, while Ushakov might claim they triumph with the age of missiles come in, but really the missiles just supplant guns. So it's not so much Ushakov triumphs as guns get supplanted by something else. And something else takes on the role of the guns. Senator Canary, when you have a different ammunition for every single gun on a ship, you know you're on a French ship. Pretty much. Death Squad. I'm not getting into that, pronouncing that one. Thinking of French coastal defense ships monitors, could a load of them have been useful to help protect the Franco-Belgian border along the rivers there? Honestly, their draft was too deep. Bowen's armor, is it Krupp or Harvey? Interesting question. Very interesting question. And honestly, The armour of the Bru class weighed in at roughly 2,300, well, 2,270 tons, nearly near enough makes no difference. And they seem to be a mixture, from what I can tell. But theoretically crop armor for everything, but there is some which suggests it might have been not crop. Peter Dawson, good evening. Sorry for slightly delay, no castles were harmed. I'm glad to hear no castles were harmed. No, because who needs seed keeping on the channel? Yeah. They had various ideas for where these ships would be based. Do the Russians make Tumbleholm look better? Well, possibly, but the French try. So now, I've heard the Mediterranean has two settings, calm and no waves, and better stay in harbour. Pretty much it does. Royal Navy manages to get around that by designing ships for the South Atlantic and basically going, yeah, the Mediterranean when better stay in harbour is still good day in the South Atlantic. Now, the Odin Class. And you're going to see a lot of ships called the Odin Class, and honestly, that's because a lot of nations like Odin. They really do. Right then, let's go to this one and Odin Class. Minutes. Now, the Odin Class are kind of special. They are built for the Kaiserlich Marine, who do like having a nice coastal defense ship. They do really like them, and they're preceded by the Siegfried Class, which are in many ways even more weirdly shaped. They do like having these sort of bumps and this hexagonal gun arrangement, and well, that's because, as I said before when talking about Battle Lisa, people get obsessed with forward-firing guns after Battle Lisa. And ramming. And as you can see, her hull is built for ramming. Her bow is. She has a slight tumble-home complexion. Not much, but a slight one there. And she is very much built for firepower. Theoretically, displacing 3,500 tons. Full load, usually closer to 3,750 tons. One of the shortest designs we've looked at so far being 79 meters long, being 15.2 meters. They are fat ladies for their size, or large ladies, because of the tumble-home shape. And they are 5.61 meters in draft, so they're not the deepest of draft ships we talked about, but they're fairly deep now. They have 4 fire tube boilers, supplying 2 triple expansion steam engines to support 2 screw propellers, and 4,700 indicated horsepower. Top speed 15 knots, range 2,290 nautical miles at 10 knots. Crew 276, of which 20 were usually officers. They are armed with 3 9.4-inch guns in single turrets. 8 88cm guns in, again, single turrets, and 3 18-inch torpedo tubes. They have a belt of 9.4 inches or 240 millimeters, a deck of 2.8 inches or 70 millimeters, and a conning tower of 4.7 inches or 120 millimeters. Plus, I think they have similar armor around their belt around their turrets from memory. Let's see. 2 single gun turrets placed next to each other. Why? Why? You're asking for stability issues. Look. At one point, I was honestly not sure whether those were gun turrets looking at me or whether they were the torpedo tube launchers. Honestly, when I was reading one of the write-ups. Now, this is all because, even for a coastal defense ship, the Germans believe the ultimate weapon of the ship is the ram. They believe it will be used to ram battleships. That is what the Odin Class is for, to ram battleships. So that's why they have the 2 guns forward in separate turrets, because the idea is if one gun gets knocked out, you still have the other gun firing, and those guns firing away will cover you as you get close to ram your enemy. Yes. We can be afraid. Now, what I find interesting is that they do miss out, considering these are ramming ships, and classes are called Odin and Ahir. Or here. Which is, of course, the Norse god of the sea. I'd have thought Thor would have been better for a ramming ship, but, you know. And also, let's be honest, it was more traditional to name your weapons with Thor than with Odin, because Odin could be mercurial if he felt like it, whereas Thor tended to be slightly more reliable. But life happens, history happens, and someone decided the god of the sea was better. What's interesting is that whilst the armor is 8.7 inch thick, there is also 7.1 inches of teak put behind the armor. So it's a 16-inch wall you have between you and the outside world anywhere in these ships. 16 inches. Just, yeah. Again, there was a similar 7.9 inches of armor and 7.9 inches of teak. So pretty much, let's be honest, that's pretty much, again, that's technically 15.8 inches of thickness between you and the outside world, but you know, that's still enough to make your life interesting for anyone trying to get into you. It's just not good to try and get into these ships. These ships are very heavily armored. But I honestly think with a top speed of 15 knots, even a Royal Navy pre-dreadnought would probably manage to get away from them. Senator, have you ever used the World of Warships version of a ship in your presentations? Not yet, but I'm slowly getting at building a better relationship with World of Warships, so eventually it might allow me to, yes. Who knows? Actually, I might have done in the past. I think Drac has sent me a couple I used for the cruise ones, so I think for the super cruisers I did use them. Because at first I thought the left picture was from World of Warships. No, it's actually, I think it's a painting. Seneca was 18 inches to stand up for torpedoes at the time, pretty much. Stafford. Shumi, I don't think I like the idea, I just don't think it's practical. That's pretty much my opinion of the Odin class. Death Squad, I thought of the ship which fits your armor speed combo in the diagram at the beginning. HMS Thunderchild. She does have firepower. Not much use against the aliens, but yeah, she does have firepower. It's a lot of seek. Yes. Gotta make my way back to work. Good luck. Well, you know, lots of people try to name their ships after various interesting things. Now, we're at the Cerberus class. And these are technically the British ones. Technically, and there's technically 3 of them, but honestly, they are operated by the British colony of Victoria, which is part of modern-day Australia. Yes, Victoria, you used to have your own navy, and you used to have one of these. So for my Australian viewers, see what you used to have. Now, Cerberus class are technically breastwork monitors, which we can all have a fun sort of discussion over at some point. But basically, a breastwork monitor is an idea introduced by Sir Edward Reed, who was Chief Constructor of Navy in the late 1860s. Basically, the idea was that by the addition of an armoured breastwork, essentially placed on the ship, containing within its circumference the gun turrets, bridge, funnels, and all upper decker appearances that needed to operate the ship, they would stop the ship being able to be flooded by waves breaking out of deck and allow the main arm to be positioned at a greater height than in the American monitors. So basically, the Royal Navy took the American monitor idea and decided they were going to build a few more in a slightly better fashion that they felt would be more survivable at sea. They build a few of these, but mainly you've got the Cerberus class, Abyssinia, Aglaton, Hotspur, Rupert, Cyclops, Gorgon, Hecate, Hydra, Conqueror, Hero, all these are considered various versions of Monitor. Cerberus class are the ones which are really used for coastal defense work. Especially HMVS Cerberus, which is the harbour defence vessel for Melbourne, Australia, and Magdala, which is the harbour defence vessel at Bombay, India. There is also, to a certain extent, sister ships, including Abyssinia, which is the harbour defence vessel also at Bombay, India, built to a smaller but design. They displace 3,398 tons. Notice something happening here. They have a length of 225 feet or 69 meters, a beam of 45 feet or 14 meters, a draft of 15 foot 4.4 inches or 4.67 meters. They have two shaft Maudslay engines in the Cerberus with 1,360 indicated horsepower, or a two shaft Ravenhill engine with 1,436 indicated horsepower in Magdala. Their top speed was 9.75 knots in Cerberus, 10.6 knots in Magdala. No range is really provided, but I don't think it was that long. Complement 155. Armament 4 10-inch guns in 2 double turrets. They are rifled muzzle-loading guns, though not breech-loading. They have a belt which is 6 to 8 inches of steel. I think it's Harvey, considering when they're built. With 9 to 11 inches of wood backing them, mainly teak. Turret is 9 to 10 inches of steel. Breastworks are between 8 and 9 inches, and the decks are 1 to 1.5 inches. Wesley Phillips, yes, you used the picture of HMS Plymouth from Model Warship to illustrate the quad turrets for the towns. Thank you. I did think I did. I'm not repeating that, Dan Freeman. Senna Canary, yes, it is. It's HMS Cerberus. Yep. I was asking, how would you load a large rifle gun through the muzzle? As you've been loading muzzled guns throughout history. Slowly and difficultly, but as quickly as you can. They were very stable ships and very capable. Honestly, you have to kind of interesting the fact that Abyssinia is 2,300 tons, so over 1,100 tons lighter, and still carries 4 10-inch guns. Eventually, she's reduced down to 4 8-inch guns because someone actually works out that this is not good. This is difficult to manage. We're going to work on this. Please don't sink. But, you know. What's interesting is that basically until the Indian Harbour Defence Service is discontinued, Abyssinia stays in service, and Magdala stays in service. I think she also, yeah, they all sort of disappear. With Cerberus, well, she's a more interesting story in that well, she's still able to be got to, and she's still afloat, technically afloat, as I understand it. They're doing a lot of work on her, and she's important to the heritage of the Australian Navy. And there are some very interesting graphics out there of her. And I'm going to put one up now, which I didn't include earlier because, frankly, well, because I was being a bit... Mainly because if I put it up, it would be more information I've given on anyone else pretty much the time, so I felt a bit sort of cruel. But there you go. This is the Cerberus in full detail. And as you can see from this image, she is very, very subdivided. They are very armoured. They are very protected. And they have the ability to pull the guns in on their carriages and load them. It's not exactly an easy or quick process, but they can do it. But again, breech loading would probably be a mite better. A mite better. Oh well. Let's see what the questions are. Level 98 Bear Hunting Ammo. Speaking of ridiculously sized muzzle loaders, do you ever plan a series for ironclads? Well, I've just done a series on dreadnoughts. I think I will probably do a series on ironclads and various other things at certain points again. I'm always looking at and working out what I'm going to do at certain points and trying to think ahead of when I'm away. So, like, I've got a series coming up on Winston Churchill and his various plans and follies coming up for the next couple of weeks. It's going to be a cool series. Was Reed the one who quit over the row about HMS Captain? Possibly, I'm trying to remember. It was one of the. It was in that time period. Dev Squad, I just looked at the weather for tomorrow. It's less than 30 degrees C for the first time in 10 days. First rain in 2 weeks. I may yet survive the British heatwave. Oh. Seeing as I'm spending tomorrow in a car driving, yay. Where'd the crew go in those ships? Wherever they could find a space. John, question for chat. Ultimate Admiral Dreadnought. Who would win? Japan versus France? Honestly, Japan more likely to actually build it. Joan, I would hope they call the gun. They could pull the guns in. Imagine a battle having the sailors run out with a shell to shove down their muzzle. Yeah, there was actually one ship which had to do that. Right, and we're on to the Royal Netherlands Navy. Now, these ships are particularly interesting from another perspective. As The Royal Netherlands Navy is sort of a case of, well, why are they building coastal defence ships? But if you think about it, the Netherlands is entirely coast. The trouble is, where are they going to be defending those? And these are built in 1900. They are, I would say, technically an evolution of the idea of a breastwork monitor in some respects from their design, but they are 5,002 tons. They're 96.62 meters long. They are 15.2 meters beam. They are 5.8 meters in draft. And they have 6,500 horsepower for 2 shafts, top speed of 16.5 knots, a complement of 340. Their armament is, wait for it, 2 9.4-inch guns in two single mounts, 4 5.9-inch guns in single mounts, 8 7.5-centimeter guns, that's 3-inch guns, in single mounts, 4 1-pounder guns for various reasons, and 3 18-inch torpedoes. They have a 6-inch belt, a 10-inch barbette, and a 10-inch turret in terms of their armour. The class was named Konigin Regents, De Ruyter, and Hertog Henrik. And they have an interesting career in that Konigin Regents is decommissioned in 1920, De Ruyter 1923, and Heinrich, well, she is technically decommissioned in 1969 because she becomes a floating battery ship in 1939. Then she's acquired by the Nazis in 1940, commissioned in 1943 as an anti-aircraft battery, handed back to Netherlands after Victory in Europe Day, and then she's converted into an accommodation ship in 1947 and is finally scrapped in 1969. So she technically serves for 65 years. Notice, though, we are back in that sweet spot of a 9.4-inch gun. It's almost as if it was designed for the coastal defence ship. And if those ideas that it's designed to make cruisers really cool would have really worked out, because there does seem to be a lot of ships which are having this gun, so, you know, one wonders why they don't appear on cruisers earlier. Frank Spanner, did Italians have coastal defence ships? We'll find out. I've got one from every nation which had them. Runcash, you have me and I had a series come up. I'm going to explain it. It's not going to be quite the same series as I've done before because it's not going to be a daily. It's going to be on the days I normally produce videos during the week. Because I've literally had 2 weeks between one trip and then this trip, and there's only so much time I can put things together. But that does mean, conversely, there is something saved up for potentially in the future, or potentially to be done at another time to come out not too long away. Seneca Nero, I give the ship a 7 to 10 in terms of prettiness. Seneca Nero, why are most of these ships painted white? It's what they painted the ships in the period. They like to paint them white. They looked cool white. Let's be honest, it's like we paint ships grey today. Everyone paints them grey, and is there really any point? Not at the moment. Mm. They're good-looking ships, and they are capable ones for what the Royal Navy really wants them for. And again, these ships are built to give the Dutch some strength. They're built to give the Dutch some muscle. But not so much muscle that they become anyone's primary enemy, or they are considered a massive threat. They are basically, it's straddling the line for deterrent, and that's the other thing about a coastal defense ship. It's very obviously not a threat, because it's not fast and it's not long ranged. So no one can just say, oh, you're building coastal defense ships, you're going to attack me, this is a casus belli, or this is a reason for us to build ships. It's sort of a case of, yeah, they're building coastal defense ships. Basically, unless we don't, as long as we don't go over there, they're not a threat to us. And I would say the reason the Royal Navy doesn't really build coastal defense ships is because the Royal Navy's whole philosophy was to go over there and fight the battle in your home, not try and fight the battle near our home. So coastal defense ships are about deterrence. They are a deterrent force. And that's the interesting thing when people start asking me about today, what's a modern coastal defense ship? And it's sort of go, well, the trouble is, the moment you're building a modern coastal defense ship, it's not the same as it used to be. Because any attack missile which has a range of less than 300 miles is probably not much help. But the moment you've got a ship which can hit a target 300 miles away, that's a lot further than your coast. So a coastal defense ship quickly becomes not a deterrent, but an offensive weapon as well. And also you go, well, hang on, I can't put out that. I'm going to put that much power. It's got to have surface-to-air missiles to protect it. Okay. It's got to have a gun. What caliber am I doing? What size of ship? How many missiles am I loading? Very quickly you end up with something in the corvette frigate range. The level 98 bear hunting armor. I hope the US painted their pre-dreadnoughts with a blue-orangey colour. Nope, they were white as well. Everyone painted their ships white. It's why the American fleet going around the world is called the Great White Fleet. The British white, as that's what it says, white has a sort of diplomatic connotations, but also white has a very powerful statement. It's diplomatic, but it's also a case of I'm so confident and so strong that I don't care, you can see me. You see me? That's great. But that doesn't matter. But also, white is useful because it shows the cleanliness of a ship. Very clearly, it shows how clean the ship is. And that is useful, because if you know how clean a ship is, you can make sure it stays clean. And that's good for the health of the crew. Now, I have 4 more navies to go through. I think. Yeah, 4 more navies. Right. The Tordenskjold class, the Royal Norwegian Navy. And why have I picked these? Well, because if you consider, I have done an entire video about, and I'm sure I've done this, about what were becoming the Bjorgen class, or became the Glatten and Gorgon vessels of the Royal Navy. The Eidsvolds I have mentioned so often it's almost disturbing because, of course, they're involved in the First Battle of Narvik. So, this is the class before them. The first class, really, of Norwegian coastal defense ships, the Torkensold class. They are 3,920 tons in displacement. They're 92.66 meters in overall length, but only 85.34 meters in their perpendicular length, in their PP length. So that's between basically their bow and their stern. They do have a bit of a ram. They are armed with two 8.3-inch 45 guns, six 4.7-inch 45 guns, six 12-pounder, that's 76mm 40 guns, and six 1-pounder quick-firing gun, and two 18-inch torpedo tubes. They have Harvey armor, a belt of between 7 and 4 inches around the ship, and turrets of 8 to 5 turret armor of 8 inches on the facing side and reducing the 5 inches on the aft. Both ships were phased out of active duty in the 1930s and used as training vessels. But the Germans after they invaded in 1940 turned them into floating flak batteries. And whilst they returned to the Royal Norwegian Navy and serve as barracks after World War II, they're scrapped quite quickly after it. But they do, as you can see, end up in World War II. And they do look like a pre-dreadnought. You could be excused for thinking if you saw that coming towards you, that's a pre-dreadnought battleship coming towards me. It's not, but you could be excused for thinking it. Honestly, the way I decide, I say about coastal defense ships is they are big enough that you cannot just send a cruiser to outfight them. The whole idea of a coastal defense ship is that if you are building a ship which is no threat to the world's major navies, but it means that if they want to fight you, they have to send a battleship. They cannot fight you cheaply. You're making the cost of you being put down by a larger navy expensive, because they can't bring just one battleship. They have to bring a battleship with every task force they send, because they don't know where one of these ships is going to be. So they have to have a battleship with every group. So they only have one invasion force and one force turn up. In which case, there might be multiple of these ships there, and they might get into torpedo range. Or you have to have a battleship with every force you send. And honestly, again, you might find that the enemy has concentrated all their coastal defense ships in one squadron together with coastal batteries, in which case you need more battleships. So that means every group you're sending needs to have 3 or 4 battleships with it. So suddenly, your invasion force to take on one of these fleets cannot just be cruisers. You are having to send 16, 17 battleships. In which case, you've basically made it so that the only navy which really probably has enough ships that it can dispatch that and still carry on its other duties, if it wants to intimidate you, is the Royal Navy. So you just make sure you keep on good terms with the British. And you hope you don't upset them. Otherwise, everyone else, you're really sure you want to come? Because, let's be honest, you probably will win. You'll probably bring enough mass, you'll win. But what will be the cost? How much will you lose? And more importantly, how much face will you lose because of what you lose? And that's the big thing. These ships are about loss of face, a face they'll inflict. Hello, Nook. Modern coastal defense ships in the Baltics, one can get away with roughly 100-kilometer missile range. In some archipelagos, even the 25-kilometer Spike variant. Yes, but if you're trying to deter major fleets, this is the thing. These ships are a deterrence from... I would say coastal defense ships are built by lower medium powers. They're not built by the small powers. They don't have... Although there is, interestingly, one example we're going to get into is built by a smaller nation. But they're built by medium powers, or at least medium regional powers, who do not have the money or the economy to support a proper battle fleet or a significant enough force. Like the Brazilians, they put 2 dreadnoughts in. And again, that means the Brazilians having 2 dreadnoughts just makes the problem of rocking them even more difficult. You cannot intimidate nations which have this level of firepower easily or cheaply. You have to be able to do it in another way. So that's what they're doing. So these ships all have very long service lives. They do, because again, what is the thing that wears out ships most of all? It's sea time. Why is currently the Royal Navy spending a huge amount of money refitting its Type 23s? Because they're having to basically replace large chunks of the hull to give them their service life they need to cover till the Type 26s and Type 31s end of service. And that's the big problem. Because you need the hull life. This is one of the interesting things people forget. They talk about with airplanes, they talk about other things, they forget that ships and the machinery in them have a hull life. You have an engine life. And the more you use it in deep seas, in the big oceans, when you have the big issues and the full fury of Mother Nature, the more quickly you will work through that life. So coastal ships tend to have quite a long service life because they don't face that. So again, they become a financially very prudent method of deterrence, because you can keep them in service a long time and they remain a threat for a long time because they have honking amount of armor and a honking firepower. Let's be honest, it's got a even with its 8.3-inch guns. There aren't many cruisers in the world that can really want to take this on. Even in the 1930s, you're going to want a battleship. Frank Spanner, were any proper battleships turned into coastal defense ships, not counting turbots? Not really. The British have a few interesting pre-dreadnoughts after various German raids on Hartlepool, etc. I think Hartlepool? I think it's Hartlepool. But the British get interesting at various points. And now we are on to the Russians and their coastal defense ships, which are, let's put it this way, it's fun. These are built in 1895, and they're really the last of the Russians' coastal defense battleships, is what they really consider them. They are roughly 5,051 tons in displacement. Their length is 87.3 meters. Their beam is 15.85 meters, draft 5.9 meters. Again, nothing we haven't seen before. They have between 4 and 8, depending on the ship, cylindrical coal-fired boilers, supplying two vertical triple expansion steam engines and 2 shafts. And they carried, well, they had 5,750 indicated horsepower and 450 tons of coal carried. Top speed of 16 knots. Complement 404. They carried between 3 or 4 10-inch guns. That's 254mm ones. 420mm or 4.7-inch guns in single mounts. 6 47mm guns in single mounts. And 10 37mm guns in single mounts. And carried 4 15-inch above water torpedo tubes. They had Harvey armor of 4 to 10-inch thickness on the belt, 2 to 3-inch thickness on the decks, turrets 8-inch thickness, and conning tower also 8-inch. Now, the thing is, the Ushakov had its 10-inch guns in 2 double turrets. The Sverige had its 10-inch guns in 2 double turrets. And it was the Admiral Apraskin, the third of the class, which had 2 double and 1 single turret. Now, interesting enough, during the Russo-Japanese War, the Ushkovs were assigned to the 3rd Pacific Squadron, under the command of Rear Admiral Nikolai Nekrasov, sailing to reinforce Rozetsky's 2nd Pacific Squadron in February 1905. They left the Baltic, sailed around Europe, through the Mediterranean Sea, through the Suez Canal, across the Indian Ocean, and managed to make the rendezvous at Van Phong in French Indochina on 26th April. So these ships have gone far from the coast they were supposed to defend. They take part in the Battle of Tsushima. They actually trail Naval's more powerful ships, but these are still actually quite potent ships, although they are largely ignored by the Japanese. Admiral Cinnamon was not hit at all. Ushakov had her bow smashed in, and so Nekrasov managed to order his ships to turn north to make for Vladivostok. And then he orders them to turn southeast to try and evade the Japanese torpedo boats during the evening, but again turns north later that night. Ushakov doesn't make the speed required, falls out, and there is debate as whether she was sunk or scuttled by her crew during the following morning. Senovin and Graskrin managed to remain with Nekrasov and surrender the following morning when he's spotted by the Japanese fleet. And so, Senovin ends up serving with the Japanese Navy until 1935 and being expended as a gunnery tagger in 36. And Apraskin ends up serving with the Japanese Navy till 1924. Then she's transformed into a memorial ship to commemorate the Battle of Tsushima. She's severely damaged in 1939 and is scrapped shortly thereafter. So, basically, the Russians supplied the Japanese. Two dozen Scarborough, December 1914. They didn't quite start doing it that early, but probably yes, Scarborough. I'm not sure why I said Hartlepool, but it's after those raids. That's God. The RN announced they're going to keep 2 ships on the station South East. Which station do you think they'll come from? Or will there be a load of deferred maintenance? There'll be Overseas Patrol Squadron, probably River Class, so probably the 2 new ones which have ended service recently, which haven't yet been assigned. The Overseas Patrol Squadron is probably going to get upgraded at some point. Someone's probably going to add in some more ships. I wouldn't be surprised that a River Class batch 3 being ordered at this rate. It's supposedly going to be the Type 31s and 32s which eventually take over the role, and I'm sure they will do, but I wouldn't be surprised if, in at least the short term, a River Class batch 3 ordered, because it'll be cheap and an easy way to up the presence. And it's a good way of starting out presence in an area if you haven't been doing long-term deployments to the Far East for a while, is to maintain a presence with OPVs and have occasional visits by, well, perhaps yearly visits by carrier battle groups, or bi-yearly visits by carrier battle groups, and have single ships turning up in the in-between time, just to maintain your presence. M35 Benjamin, hello! Frank Sonner, what traditional category of warship is a CDS hail from? I would say the idea is very much armor and firepower of a second-class battleship in some respects. That's what you'd be talking about, second-class battleships in some respects. They're powerful ships, but they're not nothing to take on a first-rate battleship. They're basically powerful enough that you cannot send a cruiser to engage them. Consequence, damage in 1939? How? By a storm. That, Graham Hunt, the boat is belching as much smoke as the present Russian carrier does. I'd say I'm less worried about the Ushakov being on fire, though. For some reason, I am less worried about that. Agreements. 3 British East of the Suez deployments, so a few sloops backed up by cruisers. One called Birmingham, perchance? Well, let's see. The Type 26s... Let's see. Their current names listed for the Royal Navy are Glasgow, Cardiff, Belfast, Birmingham, Sheffield, Newcastle, Edinburgh, and London. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Birmingham ends up out there, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if, by tradition, if Newcastle ends up out there as well. Usually those 2 ships did a lot of Far East deployments from memory. Liverpool also used to be another one, and I keep petitioning because I think there should be a ninth Type 26, and I think Liverpool would be a good name for it. So please, everyone from Liverpool who wants it, keep saying, we need a ninth Type 26. We need to bring back HMS Liverpool. Gross Arcy, competition idea. Best suggestion for Rozensky's nickname for Kirov, if the Time Watch was attached to a squadron. I will be starting to run competitions at some point, like Drac does. I'm waiting till I've got merchandise and things to start actually giving us decent prizes, which I'm slowly building up to. It's one of the things, when I compare myself to his channel, I have to remember that he's been running it for years and has built up all these sort of things and got these things working, and it takes time to reach that level, especially when under COVID conditions, and you can't do the things you can normally do, because a lot of things are best dealt with by personal connections and chatting to people. Although I have to admit, thank you very much to all my patrons, and thank you very much to everyone who does super chats and those members of the channel and all those things, because basically your money makes the research I do possible at the moment. Because universities are so reliable when it comes to remembering to pay their contract lecturers the full amount they owe them. Sorry, my sister is currently watering the garden out there, and I think I almost made her fall over laughing by saying the words university, reliable, and pay in the same sentence. Blue Butter, would you consider the second-class battleship USS Maine a coastal defense ship? Honestly, there's an argument to be made that the entire American battleship build for many years were coastal defense ships, so we just won't get into that. At some point, I have to do the pre-dreadnoughts properly, and when I do the pre-dreadnoughts properly, as like I've done with the dreadnoughts, I will include the US battleship program and have great fun with them. I did include the pre-dreads which were built in the dreadnought era as part of the dreadnought program, but yeah, I'm gonna do the pre-dreads properly at some point, do their own series. We are now up to the first of the two of the Swedish class, the Odin class. Now, the Odins are especially cute. They really are. Why do I like the Odin class? Well, they're built in 1896. There are 3 of them. And honestly, again, they're archetypal coastal defense ships. They're 3,445 tons in displacement. They're 84.8 meters long. They're 14.78 meters beam. Again, notice something happening here. They're all roughly 15 meters beam. They're all roughly 90 meters length. And they're 5.28 meters in draft. Again, there's just something going on here. There seems to be a coherent idea of what the probable best shape for a coastal defense ship in this period is. They have 5,350 horsepower deployed over 2 shafts. Top speed of 16.5 knots. They have a complement of 252 crew. They carry 2 10-inch guns in single turrets. They carry 6 4.7-inch guns in single sort of casement turrets. 10 5.7-inch guns. 10.5.7 centimeter guns. Sorry, they're 2.2-inch guns, but they are bought from. There are some which are bought by British and some which are bought German, so they're measured in millimeters, and it's always fun in my notes. They carry a single 18-inch torpedo tube. They have a 9.5-inch belt, and they have 8 inches of steel around the turrets. And these ones are lots of people guessing us their names. I will get there. They are Odin, Fjord, and Njord. And they are some cool looking ships. They really are. Peter Dawson, a doctor gardening or mine laying. I think you're referring to my sister. She was watering. Downstream, really optimal size shape for coastal defense ship. Perchance also handily fits into one of the graving docks at Vickers, Armstrong, Whitford, or similar. Fits handily into any sort of space which they have. Again, this is the size of dry dock facilities they readily have access to in their home countries. That's what they're sending to. And also, these are actually built by Bergesund at Finnboda in shipyard, and Njord is built at Lindholm at Goldborg shipyard, and they're good ships. The Swedish Navy has a tradition of building some very interesting ships. As you know, I have a lot of respect for the Swedish Navy, and I often talk about them. Them and the Danish Navy are 2 of my favourite navies for coming up with some innovative ideas, and they of course have the current Visby class, which if you can call any modern ship a coastal defence ship, it's probably the Visbys. But let's be honest, whatever succeeds the Visbys had better be good, because they are cool. I'm also wondering if the person who cancelled Uddevalla, K-36, is still around, because they obviously believed the world was going to be peaceful, so they didn't need it. And you sort of go, really? Have you seen the world? Do you really think you didn't need your sixth one? But no, they are good-looking ships. What monitors would you fight would you use to fight a CDS? I wouldn't use a monitor to fight a CDS. If my monitor was originally another coastal defense ship, then maybe I would bring it. Glatten and Gorgon would maybe be the ships I'd sort of bring to fight a CDS. But honestly, if I'm fighting a CDS, I'm probably bringing a battleship. Mm-hmm. Rank Shadow, would it be better for the South American navies to have coastal defense ships instead? Potentially, but, honestly, the thing is, and the reason I think the South American navies get out of coastal defense ships is because, honestly, the range is involved. If you want to cover something of the size of the coastline of Brazil or Argentina or Chile with a coastal defense ship, you're going to need a lot of them because they're not going to get anywhere quickly. And that's the problem. So you end up going to a dreadnought because, honestly, you need that speed and range to cover your coast. You want the same capabilities as a coastal defense ship, but in terms of armor and firepower, but you want the range. The thing is, a coastal defense ship makes sense for a nation which has fewer major harbors or smaller coastline. For example, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, I'd say a coastal defense ship makes sense. Netherlands, coastal defense ship makes sense. Britain, again, it's an issue. France, honestly, their navy rarely makes sense, especially in this period. Just the French. So there's not really a good coherent reason for them. But for the South American navies, there's a period where coastal defense ships make sense. But when their economies do start to take off and they start to have more ports and more places to cover, that's when really you start to go, it might be sensible to have a full-on battleship. In which case, if you're going to have a full-on battleship, have a battleship which is powerful enough that no one wants to turn up without their first fleet. Thank you, Rick Sava. It's very kind of you to say that. Graham, they might have caused the Iron War staff a few headaches if, as feared, we upset the Swedes pre and just into World War I with the proposed blockade, had it not been watered down as such. Honestly, they would have required the presence of Royal Navy battleships to deal with. If you upset the Swedes and you upset the Norwegians, etc. enough, you need to send a battleship. And that's the trouble. That's the thing. It's the cost factor. That's what you're making. A coastal defense ship is big enough that a cruiser is not going to do it. So you're going to have to send battleships. Which means you're probably going to have to send a squadron of them because you might bump into a squadron of these, and you don't want to have a single battleship going up against a squadron of these. So that means you're sending the 3 or 4 battleships. And as I said earlier, let's say you're sending 4 task groups, that's 16 battleships you need to deploy. That's suddenly a big fleet. Now, we all then go, well, in World War II, the Germans don't do that. The Germans rely on how to do actually send their big ships out, and they're relying on surprise, and as I've said before, honestly, it shouldn't have worked. If the Norwegians had been at all. Their government hadn't let them down, and it's the Norwegian government which makes the German plan work, not anything else. The Norwegian government had actually acted with something like a sensible thought process. They would have made the announcement over radio, calling up reserves, telling everyone that as Denmark has been invaded, we are going to full alert. Watch your borders. Anything comes in which isn't supposed to, send it out or return with fire. We do not. We are going to be an armed neutral. They would have probably the invasion of Norway would have gone very differently. The Germans would have probably not got anywhere near as firm a footing as they did. And when the British and the French turned up, they'd have probably kicked the Germans out of Norway. Well, they'd have probably assisted the Norwegians in kicking the Germans out of Norway. It's literally, the problem is when it's your central government. So the concept isn't bad and doesn't not work. It's the way it was handled. Because let's be honest, if those orders had come in earlier and gone out when they should have done, then Einsvold and Norge, they're not on their own. They go out together. And suddenly you've got those German destroyers going, we've got two of these ships sitting next to each other with their torpedo boats presumably around them and all their other ships around them in the blocking position, going, yeah, you want to take us? And then the Germans lose destroyers, and there's a far bigger battle getting in. And then when they do get to shore, they find troops waiting for them to not embrace them warmly, because even if there are commanders who have sympathies for the Germans, they're not going to support an invasion. Afterwards, they might support the new Quisling government if it succeeds and it's become the government, but they're not going to support the invasion, because if they do, then they've got fully mobilized troops and their second in command will put a bullet in their head and take over, because that's what will happen. Sorry, that for the lovely YouTube. You might not like that mention. They'll remove them forcefully from post, let's say. Dirt Squad. As well as the length of coast in South America, there's the lack of major harbours and docking along the vast majority of those coastlines. Could the RN have sent pre-dreadnought battleships to deal with the Scandinavian coastal defence ships? They did have a lot of spare ones. They could probably have sent those, but they would have had to be full battleships. And then you have to send screening crews and destroyers as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Whatever it is, you're sending a full fleet. Trent Lenker. I'm not sure that American coast defense ships monitors, well, hi Trent, made any sense. As the river system government, sure they made sense, but do defense New York Harbor or the Chesapeake Bay? No. No. Right, we're into Sverige class. Let's just do one thing. And it's, yeah, this is going to make that 0246. Sverige class. Swedish Navy. Now, these are interesting ships because they are built really towards the end of World War One. And so the lovely, lovely people that are the Swedes have been paying attention to World War One. And they have been learning from it. So that factors into them. Let's just quickly answer some of the questions that come in just before, because I think some of these questions need to be answered before I get into this. I'll dump Poland and call up the reserves for an exercise. There are lots of options which the Norwegian government could have done. That's good. Should the Scandinavian countries sign a mutual defence treaty? I think they had one pretty much, and I'm fairly sure if the Norwegians had asked and had mobilised, the Swedes might well have come to their assistance, although that would have been a very big political question, as they remember there were still iffy relations on that front. Frank's Money, if the Japanese only had coastal defence ships in the run-up to the Russo-Japanese War, would the Russians have eventually invaded Japan? Honestly, doubt it, because frankly, the Japanese would have still had more coastal defence ships out there, and they probably still handled them just as well as they did. It's more there are issues with the Russian Navy than there are issues with the Japanese Navy. Eric Okan, as I said, yes, but I still think, honestly, if the forces had, even if they're reduced forces state after the 20s and 30s, if they'd been mobilized properly by radio, they would have. The Germans would not have got the foothold they did. They did it by a lot of. Look at what damage one battery firing did. Imagine if every battery had been armed and firing. And known they could fire. And now the Sverige class, and these are pretty. These are pretty ships. They are Sverige, Drottning Victoria, and Gustav V. Now, here's the thing. Sverige is the first one, and she is built at 6,852 tons in standard, 7,500 tons full load. She's rated as 7,000 tons by Jane's fighting ships in 1938 after she'd been reconstructed. Drottning Victoria and Gustav V are built to 7,125 tons in standard, 7,633 tons in full load. Yet, amazingly, by 1938, they are rated at 7,120 tons for Drottning Victoria and 7,275 tons for Gustav V. They've both been reconstructed and modernized between 1929, 1930, and 1937 in Gustav V's case, and 1935 in Victoria's case. Now, the Sverige is 120 meters long. The Drottning Victoria and Gustav V are 121.6 meters long. So they're a little bit longer. Beam for all ships is roughly 18.6 meters. Draft 6.3 in Sverige and 6.2 in the other two. Gustav V. Their armor main belt is 7.9 inches between the barbettes and 3.9 inches and 2.4 in various sections forward and aft. Upper belt is 3.9 inches from behind the forward barbette to the after barbette. The main turret has a 7.9 inches at the front, 3.9 inches aside, and 2 inches on the roof. The main barbettes are 5.9 inches. This is armor. Secondary turrets have 4.9 inches of armor. Secondary barbettes are 3.9 inches of armor. Comet is 6.9 inches of armor. And deck, it has between 1.8 and 1.2 inches of armor. Their machinery. They have 4 shafts powered by Curtiss direct coupled turbines with 20,000 shaft horsepower in Sverige and 12 Yarrow type coal-fired boilers. However, in Gustav V and Drottning Victoria, they have 2 shafts, which are powered by Westinghouse geared turbines, manufactured by the Motala Company, and again powered by 12 Yarrow-type coal-fired boilers. All ships are upgraded to oil-fired boilers in the 1930s. However, they kept the ability to burn coal in order to operate on an alternative fuel supply if Swedish oil supply was cut off. So they were able to be powered by coal or oil. As built, their armament was 4 11-inch guns, 45 caliber, in 2 twin turrets built by Bofors. They took 17 seconds to load each gun, the guns, and there was a dividing partition between the guns, so theoretically one side of the turret could be taken out and the other side would still be able to fire and fight. They had 8 6-inch Bofors quick-firing guns, 1 twin turret super firing over the forward main battery, and 6 single turrets, 3 on each beam. They had a broadside of 4 forward, and 8 for either side and 2 aft on those. So not my preferred armament. I would have preferred them to have, well, if they'd done it by my counting, they'd have converted those 6 single and 1 double into 4 double turrets, 2 wingers and 1 aft. But, you know, people don't always do what's best. They also have 4 75mm Bofors AA cannons. That's 3-inch guns. Both mounted, mounted just in the sort of the X position to the rear turret's Y position. 9 0.26-inch machine guns and 2 18-inch torpedo tubes. Their modernizations in the 1920s and 30s included underwater torpedo tubes being removed and the torpedo room being converted into an artillery central to serve the modern range systems and fire control equipment for the heavy secondary and AA gunnery. So they basically removed the torpedoes room and turn it into a fire control space. All small gunnery and 6-inch guns were removed and replaced with modern Bofors 75mm, 40mm and 20mm anti-aircraft guns. 2 of the 6-inch guns are removed and they're replaced. The 11-inch main artillery is upgraded by new ammunition to have a range increase. And after reconstruction, their complement goes up to 450. It started as 427. It increases by 23. And as a flagship, it goes up to 464 from 443. They are built domestically, but a 4th ship was considered was not built due to the economic difficulties. Now, these ships are the interesting ones, as they are built small enough to hide behind archipelagos and in shallow waters, but unlike other coastal defense ships, they are theoretically able to form core of an open sea battle group, operating with cruisers, destroyers, and torpedo boats, and basically being the mini battle group, the mini battleships the Swedish felt they needed. It was in many ways a response to Soviet Russia and the full-size battleships having a very limited operating space in the area the Swedish are operating in the Barents Sea, in the that sort of area. It's not a Baltic. It's not a good space to be in. But the interesting thing is, there is a good argument, and it's made by Daniel G. Harris in 1992 edition of Warship Magazine, in his article about the Sverige class coastal defense ships, makes the claim that these ships were one of the reasons why Germany didn't invade Sweden during World War II. They were quite scary ships. Let's be honest, they have 11-inch guns. Therefore, they match in to the Scharnhorst and the Deutschland class. But I would also add that these ships are freaking scary. And again, it's another reason why I put it down to the Norwegian government that the Germans do succeed. Because again, if the Norwegian government had immediately on invasion Denmark, A, mobilized their troops, and B, sent a message to Sweden going, we don't want to get invaded here, and Sweden going, well, we don't want to be invaded either, let's work together. These things turn up. No one really wants to fight them. They're not fun to fight. They're the exact opposite of fun to fight. Nicholas Wu. So these are truly pocket battleships. Again, it's the 11-inch guns, but I would say if any ship actually going to make the claim to be a pocket battleship, probably the Sverige class have far more of a claim on it than any other ships. And then for him, the only way I can see the Norwegians doing their mobilization with us would be if done it by post, but insisted on handwriting and personalizing each letter and calligraphy. I'm so surprised they didn't do that. They are classic-looking ships. That is the point. They shouldn't be fun to fight. What ships are fun to fight? There are a fair number of ships that are fun to fight. Lights now changed, so I'm not going anywhere, but I'm going to be turning on the lights and closing windows so I don't get descended upon by mosquitoes. Bum ba dum bum ba. Yeah, that's it. There we go. Done. Hello, everyone. Right. Now I am bathed in artificial LED light. Hello. Dev Scott, the Sverige class, meeting Swedish class, meeting the German troop transports heading to Oslo Fort. Got the option of an angry fort ahead, or an angry pair of 11-inch armed ships behind. It wouldn't be fun. Hello, Mike. Transfer. What are some examples for ships that were actually fun to fight? Well, Royal Navy seems to have a lot of fun in the Napoleonic Wars, but that might not be by design. That might just be by luck. Maybe. Right then, the Thornbury class, and these are the last ones I'm actually going to be talking about tonight because I just found it cool, and I was sitting there going, so the Thais were building And they ordered them from the Japanese. So these are built by the Japanese. And they're preceded by the Rattan class gunboats, which were built by the UK for the Thai Navy. Reordered in, they were built. They displaced 1,000 tons and capable of 12 knots, but were armed with only 2 6-inch guns and 4 12-pounders. These, the Vey-ne-mőy-nen class coastal defense ships, are armed with. They are 2,265 tons, long tons, or rather 2,300 tons. They are 76.5 meters long. They're 14.43 meters wide in beam, 4.17 meters in draft. Their propulsion is manned diesels, powering 2 shafts with 3,900 kilowatts or 5,200 brake horsepower. They've got 15.5 knots top speed, a complement of 155, and they're armed with 4 8-inch guns in 2 twin turrets, 4 3-inch anti-aircraft guns, that's 76mm ones, and 4 40mm anti-aircraft guns. They have a 2.5-inch belt. They have 4-inch armor on their turrets, 4-inch barbettes, and their decks are 1.5 to 1 inches. Now, here is the interesting thing of their history. They're built by Kobe Shipyard of Kawasaki Heavy Industries in Japan. They're commissioned in 1936. Although Sverige is actually launched in 1937 and completed in 1938. And Vey-ne-mőy-nen is launched in 1938 and completed in also in August 1938. Vey-ne-mőy-nen was the flagship of the Royal Thai Navy and often invited and also from other countries for exchanges. In 1941, Vey-ne-mőy-nen engages the French Navy at the Battle of Ko Chang and was damaged and stranded. At the request of Thailand, Kawasaki Heavy Industries was contracted to take her off the reef, and she was successfully raised by Japanese salvage workers at the end of 1941. The hull unfortunately had been severely damaged, and the ship remained in a moor condition for a long time period after World War II. And due to her advanced age, only the turret and bridge structure were later landed in the Yard Naval Academy for preservation, and the rest was dismantled. Sri Andura was not damaged in the Battle of Ko Chang and remained operational, but ran around during the coup d'etat in June 1951. During the coup d'etat in June 1951, and was thereafter heavily damaged and sunk by Thai army shelling, only to be later refloated and dismantled. And for those who don't know, the Battle of Ko Chang took place during the Franco-Thai War of 1941. In this case, a flotilla of French warships attacked a smaller force of Thai vessels. The battle results in a tactical victory by the French Navy over the Royal Thai Navy, but it is kind of a disputed action, as it ends up being Japanese diplomatic intervention resulting in a ceasefire. The force of the French is 1 light cruiser, 4 avisos, 9 aircraft, and 950 troops. The Thais technically 3 coastal defense ships and 2 avisos. The Franco-Thai War, of course, for those who don't know, were basically over Thai claims to French to various boundaries with French Indochina. Following the fall of France in 1940, Major General Piblo Sungram, the Prime Minister of Thailand, decided that France's defeat meant that the Thais were even better placed to manage to regain the states had been ceded to France during Chulalongkorn's reign. Sorry about that. And basically, there is a war. And well, broadly speaking, whilst technically the Thais don't exactly win it, the French aren't exactly winning it either. And when the Japanese come in, they force the Japanese to cede the territory to the Thais. Fun times. And there are many people who probably went, well, hang on, World War II was going on at this point. What else? There was other wars? Yes, there were lots of other wars. Just because the world war's happening doesn't mean other powers aren't going to get involved in a war. And even if you decide to bow out of one war because you've decided you can't win it and you therefore are going to lose, so you decide to get out of it, because you know, doesn't mean other people don't decide they want to get involved in a war with you. Thanks on it. So no Italian coastal defense ships? Not really. Wouldn't it make sense for Italy to have coastal defense ships or their imperial holdings overseas? So, honestly, the Italian overseas holdings are mostly in range of their battleships. And the point is, for the Italians, why they're building proper fully Italian battleships is because they're dealing with the French. And they want to manage to, how do I put this? Upset you have to remember the Italians don't build what we would call coastal defense ships because the Italians are seeking to inspire the British with good ideas and constantly building because they're competing with the Austro-Hungarians and the French, which means their ships might be needed on either coast. And as there's no quick way across Italy because there's a mountain range in the middle of it, the ships have to go around it. And so you end up building a battleship because you need the range and speed to go around Italy quickly. Cosmos, we need a Thai speaker. We do need a Thai speaker. But I don't have one on speed dial, unfortunately. That'd be a cool thing to have. But I don't have one on speed dial, as said. Right. So, the Vey-ne-mőy class. And basically, Thailand continuing their long-running history of having rather interesting ships. Let's be honest, the Thai Navy is one of those navies which, frankly, you can never doubt it not having some interesting vessels. You know, they have an aircraft carrier, still in service from memory. Commissioned in 1997, yes, still in service. The HTMS Shakri Norabe. And she carries helicopter, she carries various helicopters, but she has retired her Sea Harriers. Hangar space for 10 aircraft. Oh. Hmm. Thais often do have a fairly interesting navy. And it's a, as I said, capable one. Well trained and a fairly large number of bases. Now, there is a translation by Phonetos called Language Line we use in hospitals, but they are expensive. They are. Andrew Bender, would not devastation a dreadnought of the 1870s BRN CS? Not really. Because they are not built as coastal defense ships. They are built for sort of different roles. Their duties are far more to do with, well, A, testing out their designs, and B, they are built, theoretically, if they're built as anything, as battleships. They're not great battleships, but they're built as battleships. Graham Hanlett, before I forget, where do I find the archives of the Kaslik Marine, and are they accurate? Now, the German naval architect, well, how do I put this? If you want to find the records in the UK, we have them microfilmed, and they're in, I think, in they're at Kew National Archives. I think that you can find them microfilmed. Various aids, various of the guides. If you're looking in America, the United States Naval History Division has them. And if you're talking about Germany, they have their own naval. They're part of, I think, the German Federal Archives. I think keep them. Or from memory, yes. Yeah. They're part of the German Federal Archives now, which are in Koblenz. That's, I think. A prof at the US Naval Academy is writing a book on the history of Thailand with Tuttle. Coming out this in fall. Looks good. Perhaps I'll get it sent as a review. That'd be fun. Right, it's now till the Bru runs out. Something I have to compliment you for the volume and quality of the content you're putting out on a regular basis. No, you said I think at this point you put out more naval history content than any other naval history channel. I'm fairly sure Drac puts out more. And it's going to the next couple of weeks is going to be different because, as I said, I'm off. I would love to say a research trip, but I'm not a research trip. I'm off to Scotland to see my girlfriend. Well, actually, my girlfriend are heading up to Scotland. She's going from the Wirral. I'm going there. I'm going to meet up. It's going to be fun. And then I'm off to teach for Justin Craig, the course revision people, because they've offered me some very nice money to go and be a course director for a week. So you might get some videos done from there. I doubt I'll do it live from there because I only have Wi-Fi. But I might well do some recorded videos from there to add on to the ones which were already scheduled for Churchill. Or I might re-record the World War II ones. I've re-recorded the World War I ones today because I didn't like them when I was uploading them. So, thank you again for everyone for the super chats. Thank you to everyone for... Well, when we do super chats, thank you. Thank you to everyone for the joining the channel. Thank you to subscribers. Thank you to members. I think the thing is, if it's 5 more members join the channel, and I have to produce another emoji, which is always fun. I'm getting very good with Giphy and producing circular images. And thank you to everyone who's a patron. The patron vote will be going live this evening and will be going for at least 10 days, because that's when next time I can reliably check the results. Graham Heinlein, remember the midge cream. I drink enough iron brew, the midges don't want me. Constance, who's going to let you review a book on the history of Thailand? Isn't it a bit about your specialization training? If it's to do with the Thai Navy, and if there's another book on the Thai Navy, then nothing there on Thai Navy, I can usually do it. But also, in the nicest way, I have read and taught courses on piracy in Southeast Asia, all sorts of, and colonialism in Southeast Asia, and that's always touching around Thailand. So, yes, it's out of my PhD area, but as much as I love being a naval historian, there is honestly not much call for naval history courses to be taught. So I do a lot of empire and imperial history, a lot of maritime history, engineering history, as you know, maritime law. I teach all sorts of random things, so I often read a lot more books than just my technical naval area. And if you consider behind me some of the books, there are lots of books which are outside my theoretical area, because I have to, because that's how you earn a living these days as a historian. If you're a university lecturer, you teach well beyond your area and have to be interested and know well beyond your area. Eric Arcon, what would ships be the modern equivalent of coastal defense ships? Pretty much the Visby class are what I'm going with at the moment. Frank Smutter, what does it say, or what can be said about the USN keeping battleships on its register until 2006? Is there an important lesson we now forget, or is it always just a matter of money? I'd say battleships are still useful. Honestly, those big guns are powerful, and they are useful for operations. Basically, financially, you were in a case where you either had to build new ones, or you had to suck it up without them. And let's be honest, the Americans built new ones. That's what they were building the Zumwalt class for. You know, if they hadn't been suckered into the railgun program, which wasn't quite ready, but was showing signs of being readiness, by Rumsfeld, and had gone with the advanced gun system instead, we'd have probably been looking at a class of 6 to 8 very capable land attack ships, which would basically be the nucleus of any amphibious assault and amphibious operations. They would be the firepower which would be making it viable. And that's what you're talking about, because when you're doing an amphibious assault in the face of a peer threat, you need a lot of firepower. And yes, a carrier group is a lot of firepower, but it's very expensive to have to use carriers to provide persistent air support versus artillery. Air power versus artillery. Artillery comes in cheaper and more efficient every time, as long as things are in range of the guns. So if you're in an amphibious operation, that means big guns on a big ship. And if you know beyond your area, you're better in your area because you have all the context. True. Although there are some areas I still can't get into, which is the French politics in some of the periods in the 1900s. It confuses me. And there are so many people with the same name, and you're going around. You're sort of going, why? That's good. I was thinking earlier about a wild weasel ship, a lot of ECM and anti-ship missiles, some to try to distract missiles from their target, attract them towards the ship and destroy. Nice idea, but not sure I'd really want to do it. So now, should the Zimots have been continuing the BB numbers if they fill the same role? No, because they're not battleships. Although there is an argument they should have been continuing cruiser numbers. Frank's Manor, is there a Naval Charger Light Brigade? HMS Glowworm? In the nicest way, I think either me or Dragger's PM would get us a big Type 83. And I think I think one of the things that interesting came out in build trials recently was basically Drac and Jamie basically telling me I had to run for PM because I was the least likely to get thrown out of Parliament. It was an interesting topic. I'm not sure which build trumps that comes up in. Right, finished the Iron Brew. So, last questions, and then I'm off for the evening. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. Counterface. Battleships are also prettier than carriers. Depends on the carrier. But I do have a soft spot for HMS Unicorn. Do you have any criticisms of Samuel Eliot Morrison? I have criticisms of a lot of people. But let's just check. Before I start winding him up. Yeah, it is the historian I thought it was. He was a good historian of his time. That's what I will say. He's a good historian of his time. He's worth reading. It's one of the things I find annoying with people is sometimes they sort of, well, as said, he's got issues with treatment of slavery and various other issues in his history, but he's a person of his time, and that's the thing. Historians and the history they write tells you often as much about the time they're writing it as the time they're writing about. And that's the point. That's good. Sometimes it's the this is a French comment there. Sometimes different people, the same name. Sometimes it's the same person holding multiple positions at the same time, and you're never quite sure which it'll be. I know. That's just the thing. Oh, and as a dyslexic, I know I'm not don't put it down to dyslexia, and not all dyslexics have the same problem, but I suppose it really plays on my particular version of dyslexia that makes me very paranoid about it. Take care, Calm Gasbad. Thank you, John Shea. Thank you, DGB40. Thank you, Trent Telenko. Nicholas Wu. You mentioned Brazil could run aircraft carriers. Could Canada run 3 small 40,000 ton carriers? If they chose to, yes. Canada has a decent economy. If Canada chose to actually invest in a structural way in a navy, they could run these things. But the thing is, the Canadian government has things they consider higher priorities to spend on, so that's what they spend on. The Canadian government's budget isn't small. The Canadian government's budget is interesting. Take care, Graham Handler. Take care, Captain Seaforth. Thank you, Greg Sarowski. Dirt Scott, take care. Roland Cash, take care. Eric Can, take care. Cam goes back. Yeah, they do. They look good. Rick Vasala, thank you. Take care. Abzaski, thank you. Take care. Roland Cash, watch out for the Claymore-wielding Scots and Mel Gibson. If I see Mel Gibson, frankly, I'll be more busy about critiquing him for various movies he's been in which have had wildly historic inaccuracies in them, including, of course, is one of his more famous ones, which misses out a British officer entirely. We were soldiers. Misses out and the guy is a blooming hero and ends up dying during September 11th in Twin Towers. So, you know. Personal bugbear. Take care, Team Loka. Take care, Anuk and Blue Shabura. Thank you. That's good. It'd be so useful if they numb themselves like an institutional email system. Thanks for that. Is there a linguistic commonality between doctor and dockyard? Not really. Don't think so. And Catface. Itch's Unicorn is not a carrier, or that is what Navy wanted you to believe. Ah, of course, yes, that is the proviso. Brent Paulus, what else the smallest gun that could seriously threaten the Scharnhorst? They do pretty well with the 6 inches at the Battle of North Cape. So let's say 6 inches, but I wouldn't be surprised if... It depends on how close and what you're firing at, but the 6 inches do quite well at North Cape, so we'll go with 6 inches. Take care, Silly Marco. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Danfrin, running slightly behind on the live. Really pretty carriers versus Anglo-Galactic battleships. I remind you of the French pre-dreadnoughts. We do. Night night, everyone. Night night, Frank Spallard, Dirt Squad, and Dan Freeman. Thank you again to all the admins. Thank you to your work. For your work. Thank you very much. Take care, and see you all when I get back. Take care.